So welcome to episode 6 of Breaking Bread. So this episode we're doing something special. As you can see, I'm not Adro. We're talking to also Sim Ee Waun, who used to be the editor of Wine and Dine. And this is all in line with our July-August issue where we explore food history. And so today we're going to talk about the history of food publications and Wine and Dine. And we also have food from Goodwood Park Hotel Coffee Lounge. It's their 120th anniversary. So I'll show you what I got first. This is Hainanese pork chop. And then I got rojak. Doesn't look great, but I'm sure it tastes great. And we got durian puffs.
So I have the satay for appetizers, and I got the pork and chicken. So I hope it is pork and chicken, and it comes with the sauce with the pineapple. So that's a Chinese style satay. And then for my main course, it's this is the roti jala with chicken curry.
You were telling me before about who started the magazine,
Okay, so she was this lady called Juliet David. She really was a pioneer of her time. She was a lady who was larger than life. And she really was the lady who founded Wine and Dine. She was the first owner as well of the title. So she's basically Wine and Dine's, the root of its history. And she was a lady whom I worked under. So she gave me my first job.
Oh.
So when I graduated from university, I wanted to be a journalist. Didn't think I wanted to be a food writer, but then at the same time, I think at the time Wine and Dine was the only food magazine in Singapore. Really it was. So cut a long story short, I stumbled into it. They offered me the job, and I worked under her, and she was my mentor. And everything I learned from her. Everything I learned of journalism, I learned from her. She was a very flamboyant woman without being pretentious. And she traveled all over the world at a time when, imagine this ancient days. This is 1990. When I first started working in Wine and Dine as a features writer, it was December 1990. I just came back from uni. And there was, oh my God, there was no internet. It was like museum days, right? There was no internet. There was even the computer was sort of still fairly new when we sat down and we started writing articles, right? It was still on those floppy disks, and then you gotta stick the floppy disk into the drive, and you gotta do the DOS sort of language, and now only these Greek
DOS?
Yes. That ancient, it was like ancient days. The most fancy thing in the office was a fax machine. And information, when we had to do research, it was still like go to the library, go dig up information, go talk to people. There was like no internet the way we know it. But you see, at the time it was good fun because I think she started Wine and Dine because she wanted to bring the world of food to Singapore, and the Singapore food scene was nothing like what it is now. I think it was transitioning. So if you think of the 1970s, it's like super duper old fashioned, very, very retro. And then I think it took some time to transition. So even though it was 1990, there was still the remnants of that transition. So there were hardly any Japanese restaurants. Fine dining would be French restaurants, and not that many, a few of them. And they were beginning to emerge. So it was kind of like I said, like Brave New World. So it was like kind of emerging at that point in time. So I still remember a couple of years later when Italian restaurants started coming in, it was like, wow, such a rage. So it was really quite ancient days. And the idea of gourmet food, the idea of fine dining, the idea of the more polished side of gastronomy in Singapore was still very old-fashioned. So you still have those old men who would write about French wines, and if you didn't drink French wines, you were like kind of plebeian. And the idea of Australian wines had not quite come to Singapore yet. It was just beginning. So if you can just imagine a food scene like that. It's quite hard to imagine
It's like
now.
when you first started the job.
Yes. Yes.
So were you there like throughout the entire way and like work your way up, or do you leave and then come back?
No, I worked my way up because I first started straight out of uni.
So how long were you an editor at Wine and Dine?
You know, it's so long ago I can't remember, but I was there for 5 years. So from 1990 to July 95. I still remember that quite clearly because so I worked my way through the ranks. So I started off as a features writer and then went into various whatever positions until I ended up being editor. And honestly, I can't remember exactly when I was associate editor, assistant editor, then eventually an editor. I suspect probably around maybe N93, I became editor around there. But by 1994, I definitely was editor. And then worked until July 95. Then I left to do my master's.
What were some of the highlights that you had while you were working as an editor?
I think one of the highlights would be going to China. So we did quite a lot of junkets, but the one that stood out was going to Beijing, and that was in 1993, I think, 92 or 93. And that was a time when China just started opening up. So it was like, wow, quite a cultural shock because you go in there and you still see the sea of bicycles coming down at you. They didn't have all those cars and all the wealth yet, but they were beginning to open up. And it was quite an eye-opener because we had minders moving with us all the time. But again, we were staying in one of the 5-star hotels, one of the Shangri-Las in Beijing. We did a cover at one of the sites in China. So we actually got the chefs and heaved them with their food and everything in refrigerated trucks. We got permission to go into Tiananmen, and we did a huge photo shoot there for our cover. And when we did that, there were like 400 over people behind the cameraman staring at what we were doing because at that time they didn't really see these sort of things yet. So actually I got the cover. I kept it because it's such a highlight. So we did this and all this stuff, the chefs from Shangri-La, they heaved it, the Beijing Shangri-La, they heaved it on refrigerated trucks complete with their bicycle and everything. And I think they had a whole fish, a whole salmon or something. And they just heaved it over, and it was a trek from the car park to wherever we had to in front of this place.
So how do you think the food publishing industry here would look like in the future?
I honestly worry because I find that with social media, I think people's attention span has reduced a lot. So I think long reads are no longer very popular. I don't think people have the patience for long reads and long features. But then the sad thing is, if you don't have long reads, you never will have in-depth information. You won't get in-depth knowledge. So it's, I suppose, short videos and the kind of social media platforms that we have has a very wide reach. And I think the good thing about it is that it brings a lot of variety to people's attention, but yeah, there is no depth, or there is not enough depth if people don't mix that together with long reads or longer, presentations. So I don't know. I think the good thing about the current situation is, I guess, there's so much more information flying around. I mean, compared to my early days when, yes, you go to the library and you dig up information that could be like 10 years out of date, I think everybody is a lot more current, and I think that's great. And I think there's so much exchange of knowledge now. And I think, I think that makes life a lot more colorful and exciting, and things happen faster. But I think it would be great if people rediscovered that attention span that gives them that thirst for knowledge. Then I think food publications will be able to, I think, get back to realizing their full potential.
Publications have gotten so caught up with trying to earn money or like be relevant that they've forgotten, the actual meat of the story, which is, all this really important information that we should get and give to readers.
Yep.
Yeah. But I think also because of how fast paced everything is, people are learning that it's very important to slow down now. So there's also
now
like
with COVID, right?
But also there's this like pushback,
I mean, interesting that you say pushback, because I did notice that there seems to be a little bit of that, not just in food, but I sense that there is that pushback, that there is that I suppose it's also that return to that interest in nostalgia and retro stuff. Maybe that's part of the pushback.
I see all these forms of social media as more avenues to tell your story. So
yes,
but hopefully people don't just take like that one portion and use it. They go research and go find other stuff.
I think so. Yeah. I think that would be good. I think a balance of both would be nice.
But that's not up to us lah. So
no. But the last maybe about 10 years, 8 to 10 years, I get the sense that there was this overwhelming interest in trends, in being seen in the right place, the newest restaurants, the fanciest restaurants, that kind of thing, that kind of envy factor. I got the sense that there was a lot of that going on, and I find that now it seems to be calming down, that people are not quite so crazy chasing after the C and B scene sort of culture, I find. So I think that may not be a bad thing. Because, now with people coming down, maybe they are a bit more interested or have more patience reading, other stuff apart from just restaurant reviews and where's the next new restaurant and who's the next new decorated chef and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you for joining me.
Oh my gosh.